It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Woo, it is time for that TIE Fighter Renegades. I know that whenever these drop, it is one of the favorite times of not just myself and my co-host, my man, Robin Freebeard, but of all of you out there listening. I know how hot this show is. I know how excited. I see some of the numbers that we can track, but I don't want to track you. But it's always good to know that you're digging what we're putting down, because in this whole thing of geekdom and nerddom and so much more, I do think that, I hate this term, but I'm going to use it. And it's no reference to the recent Netflix movie either, but I feel like Rob and I are kind of the old guard online with appreciation for our franchises and so on. But we have admittedly, there's a lot of Star Wars news to get into. We know y'all love that. And we're going to see if we can talk a little Star Trek, and maybe we'll get into a bit of a bonus topic that I actually teased on Sovryn Tech. We'll see if we get to it here. If not, it's something that certainly we can talk about in the next episode. But anyway, Rob, welcome to TIE Fighter Renegades once again. It is time to get into action, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll just open this thing right up. We are going to finally get into our Clone Wars review. We'll get to that in actually just a few minutes here, because I know you've all been waiting for that. But opening it up, we ended the last show, or at least it was a major thrust of our last show. We were talking about EA's newly announced Star Wars Squadrons, which is their latest. I'm sure they think it's a magnum opus, but it might as well be a flaming bag of shit. But okay, it might be good, right? we should withhold some judgment. But the one thing I think that go ahead.
Ironically, the gameplay trailer dropped, I think, like within minutes of us recording.
Yeah, which I did include it in the show notes because it dropped like literally minutes after we were done. It was really, really, yeah. And I mean, let me ask you about that first. When you did see the gameplay trailer, what did you think, Rob?
I mean, mechanics wise, it looks like it might be okay. It is kind of weird that, we're seeing starfighters move the way we haven't seen them move at all in Star Wars before, where they're doing, kind of like they're drifting,
right,
kind of like a car would. That's a little weird. So I can't really, until I get into it and actually try it, I can't say whether that is going to be a worthwhile, sort of thing that adds to it or not.
Part of me wonders, do you think that has to do with like the engine not being updated yet to how it flies in actual space, and that's like an engine designed for atmospheric battles? Because that's how, when you fly in Battlefield 3, it kind of feels like that. I mean, that game.
Well, they showed those maneuvers being pulled off in space.
Right.
So, I mean, and one of the developers did an interview too, and they specifically pointed out that yes, this is something we're intentionally adding to, I guess, the I don't know if you would say mechanics. The lore, but the mechanics of starfighters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. Okay. Well, I all right. Yeah. I mean, I saw it and I felt, I was like, okay, this looks all right.
Yeah. I mean, they clearly are showing, reverence of some degree to the X-Wing and TIE Fighter games, and so far as the interface goes.
Yes.
You control, shields, engines, and lasers. You can redistribute the energy to where it's going to go. Right. So I did like that they have that in there.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, frankly, regardless of how this trailer looked, the most important thing was that it existed, because it basically just proved that, okay, no, this is something that they've been working on. It's not like just some placeholder announcement to placehold excitement, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So it being a thing that exists in and of itself is probably the most important point of the trailer, regardless of what's actually shown on it, in my opinion. Thoughts on that?
I think they've learned their lessons with, not necessarily announcing, but sort of like, letting the cat out of the bag as to what games are development and then canceling them. They've canceled so many Star Wars games that I think they've learned now that they can only really let anything out and show anything until it's like almost ready to go and it's actually going to happen. Which I also think lends credence to the theory that, leaks are bullshit.
Right.
Like when they don't want something to be leaked, it does not get leaked.
Yeah.
So, but when it does, it's coming from the company.
Yeah, it's by design. It's part of the plan, part of the marketing. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Yep, I agree with that completely. Let me ask you this, and on a couple Sovryn texts ago, I got into this conversation around the price of video games.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be, and we've had the conversation, we might even have had it when we were talking about Squadrons in the last episode of TFR. Would you be, if the game, for it to have no in-app purchases, no loot crates, none of that crap, and maybe even free DLC, would you be willing to spend $100 for a game?
Fuck no.
That's
no way. No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, but it is worth noting that this game is only $40. So it is far less than the standard.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, so the last time EA bit my ass, I pre-ordered Battlefront 2.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and
you're the one that convinced me. Because
right.
I had been burned with Battlefield 1. I'm like, I don't know. And then you talked it up. I'm like, all right.
Well, that's because I bought into their imperial marketing, which ended up being,
right.
Not worse than propaganda. But anyway, yeah, I hear you. So, but I mean, even for that, the deluxe edition of that cost $80, right? So, I mean, it's not like games don't already cost around that range. I just know that eventually something has to give with, like, to have, games of this kind of caliber, which it appears to be very high caliber, at least from the trailer. And to not have, loot crates and all the other horse shit. I don't think it has to be the answer, but unfortunately, I feel like the answer is going to be that these games are going to be way more expensive. But go ahead.
Wait, I think everything that's going on with this game is very deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
So EA got really burned very badly in the press and in the public because of Battlefront 2 and all of the loot crate shit and, crap going on with that.
Right.
And the gambling mechanics. I think that while, there wasn't a whole lot of backlash coming from Lucasfilm, I do think that they did come to him and say, hey, you need to make this right with the next game. I think this game is like EA's kind of like forced olive branch to the Star Wars, community. That's because you look at the way that all the customizations in this game and things that you can do with your starfighter and your pilot and all this, it looks like it was primed for DLC add-ons, loot crate, shit like that. It was already set up and ready to go for that, and I'm sure it was probably at some point going to be a $60 or $100 game, but they decided because I think Lucasfilm stepped in, basically stepped in and said, no, you can't do the same thing that you did with Battlefront 2 that you're going to do with this game.
Yeah. So this is going to be a loss leader like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and if it is, dynamite, and you know what, people probably play it for fucking ever because it'll have to actually be a good game, and it has to deliver on the value.
And it's going to be even harder to impress us because I'm just like you. I'm one of these people that the game industry hates because I don't like multiplayer.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the single player, so like my plan still at this point is to subscribe for that 1 month of the Origin access and try it out for a month. And if the, it could be an awesome multiplayer game, but I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. Same. And I almost I don't want to have the conversation here. It'd be fun to have at some point because there's a part of me, I'm so big on stories in games. Again, we're into the single player, you and I, primarily. And I mean, story is just everything to me. It's why I love JRPGs and so much more.
Yeah.
But admittedly, like now that you have people who make YouTube videos where they're basically movies, you know, they're them playing the game, but it'll include the cutscenes and everything else, and they turn it into like a 3 or 4 hour movie, which is actually how I experienced Fallen Order. I'm worried that's enough for me. Like, I'm like, okay, no, that's great. Yeah. You know, and like, I don't even have to play the games anymore. Like I could just watch them. And anyway, there's a conversation to have around that, but yeah, I don't know.
I think there's multiple reasons why that is so popular. First and foremost, like you said, you don't have to pay for the game if which you're interested in the story. Second is I think, a lot of people that are really into those Let's Plays and stuff like that are perhaps the younger siblings of people from our generation. And, you know,
they're trying to get caught up.
Well, no, but they experience video games mostly through, you know, watching their older brother, you know, play.
That is
not actually, you know, playing the game themselves.
You might have solved a very big riddle for me. That is incredibly insightful in my opinion, because you and I, like our generation, as it were, and our generation is kind of hard to define, right? Like we're, you know, Generation X or millennial, or are we Zennials, right? You know, it's because the world has changed so much in our lifetimes, at least in its infrastructure, not that humans have changed. But I mean, we're like the first generation gamers.
Yeah.
You know, like we didn't look up to anyone playing those games. Like we were the ones trailblazing, playing these games and being so hot on about them. That you really might have struck a chord, because I mean, I'll just say quickly on a personal level, like I'm really into music, you know, as much as I'm into games, I'm certainly into music. There is no doubt in my mind, as much as I love heavy metal, that my love for heavy metal comes from the fact that I thought my older brother was so goddamn cool, you know, and that like he was the great hero, that I just wanted to be him, you know, and I just wanted to kind of copy whatever he was into. It's like, oh, he listens to heavy metal, and even as I got older, so he listens to heavy metal and he gets laid. Okay. You know, I'll put it that way. I think you've got something there, and we'll expand on that at some point, I'm sure, but, and I need to integrate it and think about it more as well. But that's a very interesting thought. So, well, anyway, I mean, Squadrons. So would you say after the gameplay trailer and so on, would you say cautiously optimistic?
Yeah, I'm cautiously. I mean, I've heard something about the single player campaign that I'm not exactly too hot on.
Which is?
That the way it's going to work out is yes, there's going to be, you know, an Imperial side and a Rebel side, but instead of doing, you know, a Rebel campaign and then you finish and you do the Imperial campaign, or, you know, vice versa, it's going to jump from mission to mission.
Oh, and you have to play both?
Rebel Imperial, Rebel Imperial, Rebel Imperial. I'm not a fan of that.
No, I'm not either. And I don't think it even makes sense game-wise, because then you really don't get, like StarCraft did it where, okay, first you play the humans, then you play the Zerg, and then you play the Protoss, right? But you do them completely, and then you go to then you play the next race. Yeah. And that made sense because the depth of gameplay required you to play as one race for a long time, you know, and to really master what they do. So yeah, that scenario doesn't make sense to me.
I have a feeling that the reason they're doing this is for some sort of reason of continuity, and that as you move on to the next mission, there's going to be context in the Imperial side of things that'll come up in the next Rebel mission that you wouldn't have unless you played that mission as the Imperial side.
Yeah.
So you're going to be informed on things that the characters in the Rebel campaign aren't aware of, but that are happening in the story, and they want you to get that all at once. Whereas you and I probably both prefer is to go through it, play one campaign where you're the Rebel side, or play the Imperial campaign, and then you play the other side to get the alternate point of view, and then you go, oh, that was what this was all about, and this is why that happened, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree with you. That is how I'd rather do it. I get there is, I mean, like novels, like the Alexander Freed novels of Alphabet Squadron, they're written like this, where one chapter is Rebel, next chapter's, Shadow Wing, well, and so on, right? Like it's Rebel, Empire, Rebel, Empire, Rebel, Empire. And I get that there is somewhat of a narrative sense, and there is a buildup of when the major conflict is finally going to occur. So I can kind of appreciate that. I just think with video games, when you're trying to master controls and gameplay, I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Especially given that we know that there's going to be vast differences between the two sides and the way the ships handle.
Right.
Yeah. At least I hope so.
Sure.
I mean, if they totally water both sides down to make them, very similar to one another, then yeah, I'm going to dunk on this game so fucking hard.
Oh, it's going to suck. That would suck. I mean, part of why I think TIE Fighter, the original TIE Fighter game, is better than X-Wing is because, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the primary reasons is that how fleet action and starfighter action occurs for the Empire, because it is so vastly different from what you do in X-Wing. Yeah. You can be far more, no pun intended, rogue in X-Wing and more singular as to where you have to think about things very differently in TIE Fighter. And that's what I like about it, is the dramatic difference in style, and I think the best term for it is fleet action. Well, that's kind of, I'll go with cautiously optimistic as well, but that's a little disappointing. I wasn't aware of that, what you just talked about. Damn. Well, that said, something I don't think we have to be cautiously optimistic about, we can just be full on optimistic about, is, the tried and true. That being something that I know both you and I have had, and you've certainly had a much closer one, a very, very keen eye on with the last great flight simulator for Star Wars, that being X-Wing Alliance. There's been a pretty hardcore mod community around it. And there's been one particularly very hardcore mod that you shared with me, a demo of in a TIE Fighter, and it was fucking gorgeous. Link is in the show notes for people to check this out. But I mean, even when you see the glow effects on the blaster bolts, or from the engines, or around like a docking ring bay with the shield, stunning. I mean, just has such a great fucking look. I mean, give me the breakdown on this, Rob.
They've got dynamic cockpits now. So, you can actually see the motion of the ship as you're maneuvering stuff, and the lighting on the interior of the ship, changes as you're moving around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fully 3D and everything, and they've finally done with the TIE Fighter cockpit what I've been wishing for they did for years, is that the original TIE Fighter game was designed for a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Right.
And so it doesn't really, work as well if you're trying to do it in widescreen, because, in TIE Fighter you have just that, little round window.
Yes.
And, 2/3
it
looks
looks
of the
elliptical
space
afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, 2/3 of the space is filled up by just, metal walls, of the interior of the cockpit. And so they finally zoomed it in, the window, so that, the window fills more of the screen. So that was a huge improvement.
So now, is this going to, I didn't even think about that. Is this going to work like on 21:9? Is that something that they're, as far as, that's so fucking good.
Not only is it working in 20:9, they're going to have it working in VR.
Oh. What do we need squadrons for, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
That's what you said to me. Yeah. You're like, we don't need no stinking squadrons. And I was like, yeah, baby. Oh, I love this. That's precious. That's the best term I could think of. It is absolutely precious that this sort of thing exists. I mean, I've seen great experiences. Like I think they took Free Space 2. This is one of the most heavily modded PC games of all time. And they modded it to where it was they turned it into a Wing Commander sequel called The Darkest Dawn. And that was a tremendous experience at the time. And this is, well over 10, maybe even over 15 years ago. But yeah, when the passion comes in from the fandom, and they have a game that they can actually do this sort of thing to, the results are almost always brilliant and far better than anything any game dev house could come up with.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
this
I mean,
go
ahead.
This is a mod that's been going on for 20 years now.
Right. Yeah.
So, and yeah, they've got some really experienced people working on it.
You know, the sad part is that I imagine EA looks at this and, you know, instead of thinking, here's what EA should think. How do we make a game that garners that kind of passion and community? But that's not what they think, because they need you to buy the new one in 2 years, you know, or in a year. And what a shame that's not the way of thinking, you know.
It's all short-term thinking, like everything else these days.
Yes. Yeah. Hit the nail on the head. That's, well, I don't want to say it's the problem with everything, because the world is far more complex than that, but that is a major contributor to a lot of problems, is that everything is short-term. But yeah, man, I loved it when you shared this. It was such a joy to behold. And again, everybody do check it out. It is in the show notes. Keep track of it. Is there the official, what's the official name for this?
Yeah, it's XWA Upgrade.
XWA Upgrade. Right. So it's X-Wing Alliance Upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, keep an eye on this, folks, because I mean, this is going to be, after Squadrons comes and goes, this will still be here, you know, and you're gonna, and I just, in fact, I love that they're making this work on 21x9. That alone is amazing. Killer. All right. Well, anything else on this, Rob?
No.
All right. Well, let's talk about something else that's a little more of the tried and true, that made a comeback in the year of 2020. And that, of course, is something we've teased for months now, because it actually finished its first run on Disney Plus good 2-3 months ago, perhaps. And that is none other than season 7 of Clone Wars. And I think it is absolutely fair to say that this is absolutely the last season of Clone Wars. I mean, the way that they ended it, and spoiler alerts ahoy, folks, they're going to be rampant here. You've had plenty of time to watch it. It's only 12 episodes. But I mean, the way that it ends, it leads right into Rebels. I mean, it rams right into the wall of Star Wars Rebels, you know, without question. Overall, Rob, I guess we could open this up asking the question. All right. Well, actually, no, let me start with this. And we talked about this a little bit off air, but this is really, while it is 12 episodes, let's be fair here. This is really more like only 4 episodes. Like episodes, there's a 4-parter that happens, and it is and there's a lot to discuss around it. Episodes 9 through 12 are really what this is all about. This is really what we wanted. That said, okay, so we'll say that, but yeah, let me ask you then now, and then we'll get into some points here. Did you like season 7 of Clone Wars?
I liked the last 3 episodes.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I hear that. Same.
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it was the last 4. Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah, the last 4 episodes.
Yeah, it's 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, the first couple of storylines, you know, with the Bad Batch, it was okay. The second, you know, batch of episodes with the Ahsoka meeting those 2 sisters, I could have done without that. That wasn't really all that interesting. I didn't think it was. It does link up with the. I think, doesn't it link up with the Ahsoka novel?
Yeah, I'm sure it touches on it in some way.
Yeah. Because I remember it being talked about before, in some context. So I mean, you know, if you're a completist, it's definitely worth watching the entire series. But if you're just out for the conclusion of, you know, that time period, the last 4 episodes is all you really need to see.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think you would agree with me. The last 4 episodes aren't just the only thing really worthwhile here, but they're brilliant. Like, I mean,
they're phenomenal.
Yeah,
I mean, just in so many ways.
Right. I mean, it's amazing Star Wars, as Clone Wars had become the standard for being, you know, years ago. Yeah, I want to bring up a couple points on this. and there's so much to analyze here. There really is. Okay. We're going to talk more about Bad Batch after our review of Clone Wars season 7 for reasons that I'm, people might already know about, but we'll get into it here. The thing is that I felt like this was being touted as, okay, we're going back to the good times with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and so on. I did not feel like it was that at all. Like, this did not match the marketing that Disney was putting on it in any way. On the reverse side, you would agree with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know for a fact that the season was very truncated compared to the original plans for, the next season of Clone Wars.
Yeah, because we still didn't get the Kyber Crystal episode, right?
Exactly, yeah.
On Utapau or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, on Utapau. Yeah, Crystal Crisis on Utapau.
That's it. Yep. Which you can see the animatics of, but go ahead.
Right,
yeah.
And they were also going to do the Asajj Ventress story that we got in Dark Disciple.
Mm-hmm.
And they were also going to do the Darth Maul storyline that we got in
Son of Dathomir.
Son of Dathomir.
Yeah, actually, you see some of the really cool, the Mandalorians that work for Maul. You get to see those designs in the flesh, as it were, or in action, as it were, that you normally really only saw in that comic series of Son of Dathomir. So yeah, you're right. It is truncated. I mean, it again, the marketing felt like it was going that direction, and it certainly referenced all the material that you mentioned, I think, but. I don't know, that was somewhat disappointing to me.
Yeah.
But then what you do get in the last 4 episodes is so damned good. But there's a problem even there, and that is the reverse end of the spectrum. There's what you thought it was going to be leading in, and then there's what it leaves you with after the fact. Because really, as much as this smacks right up to Star Wars Rebels in a very beautiful way, the direct story after this is the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnston.
Right.
And that novel does not, like, the tone of the last 4 episodes of the season and the tone of that novel are night and day. And Clone Wars is the night, and Ahsoka novel is the day.
And not only is this season truncated, but they changed a lot of things about this season too. So
sure.
I think what E.K. Johnston wrote, what she knew of the events prior to her book, were based on the original plans for the Siege of Mandalore. Uh-huh. And the way it was going to go down originally is that, Order 66 happened while they were still on Mandalore.
Right.
And that Ahsoka and Rex were going to fake their deaths.
Right. And they changed it in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was other things that they changed. I mentioned to you before we started recording, like the episode with the 2 sisters. Originally, it was going to be a sister and a brother, and Ahsoka was going to have a boyfriend of sorts.
See, now, okay. So if she did have a boyfriend, that would play more with the tone of the novel Ahsoka.
Right.
Because that was the novel Ahsoka, in my opinion, was squarely aimed at, frankly, teenage gals or teenagers, whatever. I mean, I know it's a adult novel, but
exactly. Yeah.
But the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars season 7 were dark as fuck.
Oh,
I mean, it was exactly what you wanted. It's what you expected out of Ahsoka. It's the Ahsoka you anticipate being a precursor to what you get in Rebels. It just made a lot more sense. And so for now, if you were exploring this chronologically, to go from that to the Ahsoka novel, I feel like would be almost whiplash, because, she's acting like a little kid when no, she just buried however many clone troopers,
right.
And so on. There's more to say about the boyfriend thing too, but go ahead with your thoughts.
Well, I mean, it would not only was it dark, but it was really deep, even for Clone Wars. I mean, Rex having to deal with and process the fact that all of his brothers have been had their minds hijacked, and they're now trying to kill him.
Yeah,
and he's going to have to he's basically saying, they're not going to stop. We're going to have to kill them, or it's going to be us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's I'm sure he has some serious PTSD after that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, of course he would. Yeah, I thought Maul. I mean, what did you think of Maul's like performance? And I feel like they were trying to inject some of what they might have had in mind for the Underworld movies that would have played off of Solo. I feel like that was trying to get injected into those 4 episodes or in Maul's appearance in this, which I'm not complaining about, I mean, because all of that was really in Son of Dathomir already anyway. So it really just made sense.
Right.
I thought he was, I mean, when you realize and they don't beat you over the head with it, they slowly build to the fact that, oh, this is happening concurrently with episode 3.
Right.
Once you realize that, I mean, that alone, just knowing its context just darkens and drops the mood.
Yes. Yes. And we'll just get this out of the way. Maul was right.
Yeah, right.
About everything.
Yeah, well, break it down.
I mean, he wasn't in on Sidious's plan, but once it started going down, he figured it out really quick, and he knew exactly, who was the pawn in that situation, and even though Ahsoka had seen, his dark side, in fact, she had been told, she had been given a vision while on Mortis by her older self, warning her about her master.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't remember that, or maybe she just didn't want to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Maul. This made Maul an even better character, and he was already a great character.
Yeah.
Like he has lines and statements and, dare I say, philosophies that he lays out inside of 4 episodes where I'm like, yes, like, yeah, exactly. No, I mean, sure, he's evil, but like he gets it. He understands the nature of power. He understands the nature of, so much. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was dynamite when he said to Ahsoka, how'd it go? He said, justice is just a construct of, the current power base.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, holy shit. Yeah, how do you get away with saying that?
that's the interesting thing about Maul is that, he's already tried to go after grasping power for power's sake.
Yes.
And from here on out, he learns that is a losing game. And so he learns how to be a survivor. Yes. And that's what's on display here.
Yes, he expressly states it. In these episodes, he says, we're not going to be able to stop what's coming. All we're going to be, we can't stop the chaos. We're just going to have to figure out how to survive within it. And I mean, it was just, oh man, there's so much to take away. And Sam Witwer, I mean, on his game, he sounded fantastic. As he always does as Maul. Awesome. And it makes me, I mean, if this is the way that Maul was thinking, I find myself actually saddened that we're not getting more of those stories that were being set up by his reveal in the Han Solo movie. Because boy, we could have had a good time.
Well, I mean, there's there may be hope in the Obi-Wan series.
That's true. That's a good point.
Because they did just cast Hayden Christensen to reprise his role as Anakin Skywalker. So obviously they're going to be going back in time. Yeah,
which that was, in my opinion, a great move.
Yeah,
that's news in itself and worth it. Go ahead.
Yeah. How is it they figured out this now, and yet they couldn't do that for the sequel trilogy? Obviously the problem wasn't Hayden Christensen. He's more than happy to reprise the role.
Right. All right, let's talk about this for a minute, because this is a major aspect of there are things outside of even the storyline of the Clone Wars that we got with season 7 that I think point at very interesting things about Star Wars and where its direction in industry. When you get to, and I think it's only when you get to episode 9, they went back to the original Lucasfilm logo from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah. So like where it's just the green letters.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, really,
oh, I do. Yeah. Okay, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, where it just says like a Lucasfilm production.
Right.
Yes, before it was like the silvery thing that we've been dealing with since.
Yeah,
since
it was a typical JJ nostalgia play.
Well, I wonder about this. So because to me, it kind of feels like as soon as this part comes in, then suddenly that stamp shows up, and a part of me feels like I wonder if this is going to be if that original logo is going to be the stamp of Dave Filoni. And because I can imagine a scenario where Filoni said, George, I want to inspire confidence in the fans. Can I use this? You know, is that okay if I use your old logo? Can I have your blessing?
Yeah.
And because I feel like, so here's what I'm feeling is, and I've talked about this, I think I might have talked about it on Sovereign Tech. We may have talked about it on TFR in the past, but I do kind of buy into this notion that there is a civil war going on inside of Lucasfilm itself. Not necessarily just within Disney, but even within Lucasfilm, where you have the Kathleen Kennedy camp and you have the Filoni camp, or the Filoni, whatever the Iron Man guy. I keep forgetting his
Favreau.
name. Favreau, yeah. And you have the Favreau Filoni camp, which is basically the George Lucas camp, right? The old school camp. Because I feel like that there's like the first half of this, of Clone Wars season 7, that feels very much like a Kathleen Kennedy production, even to the point where Ahsoka would end up having a boyfriend and there'd be some cutesy love play. Just like I feel like the Ahsoka novel feels like a Kathleen Kennedy plan, because Kathleen Kennedy's plan is to reach this new demographic, right?
Right.
That might be out there. And we've talked about that. And so I guess a part of me wonders if Filoni is, again, trying to put his stamp on it, and that those last 4 episodes was Filoni getting carte blanche, you know, to, go ahead, make these however you want them. Because, again, these were so adult. Not that Clone Wars didn't already go there years ago with season 5, or 4, 5, and 6. But, yeah, that's a sense that I got. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, any read?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's an actual civil war. I think that might be the perspective of some people, obviously outside of Lucasfilm, but maybe within as well. I don't think that, you know, Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are actually in any sort of like intentional conflict.
Okay.
That's my belief. I mean, first of all, like, we're going to talk about this. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, but one of the executive producers on Bad Batch is going to be Carrie Beck, who is one of Kathleen Kennedy's hires, and she worked on Star Wars Resistance as well.
Right.
And I think she also worked on Rebels. But yeah, she was a Kathleen Kennedy hire. So, you know, there's some crossover going on here within the internals of Lucasfilm. I don't, you know, I like I said, I don't know how much of a civil war it actually is. I think that's kind of an outside perspective for the most part.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I don't know. It struck me when I saw that logo, when I saw that classic logo come up. And I mean, it got, you know, understand, I haven't seen that logo since I was probably like 10, because, you know, George Lucas switched up everything, you know, after the special edition. So I mean, yeah, it's a nostalgia play. I don't disagree with that at all, but I wonder if there's a little something extra being said there, because again, the feel of those last 4 episodes was so wildly different from the rest of the season. It just makes me wonder, like, I don't know, like it feels like something happened there behind the scenes, but yeah, I can only guess.
I will say that I do get the feeling that in season 7 here, we know Dave Filoni has his fingers on a lot of pies right now. And I mean, he's probably stretched pretty thin within the company.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
He was probably not taking sort of the hands-on direction with those first 2 storylines that he did previously took in, you know, the previous 6 seasons of Clone Wars.
Right.
But I think that when it came time for those last 4 episodes, I think he took that on whole hog and, you know, he did his thing.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I just, when Bo-Katan showed up, like everything just went up to 12. You know what I mean? Like, everything just turned right up, and I was like, all right, here we go. we're going to be fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's shift it up. I mean, let's talk about, things we didn't like, things we did. What would you say? I guess let's start with the positives. I mean, like, what was your favorite moment, would you say, of season 7 of the Clone Wars?
I kind of, already hinted this before, but, that conversation between Rex and Ahsoka, when they're getting ready to face off with, literally the entire army of clone troopers down in the hangar bay. That was one of my favorite moments. And obviously the last moment there with Darth Vader.
Oh, with Vader. That was going to be my bonus pick as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'd say those are my top 2 moments.
Yeah. I definitely, that's in the Vader moment is in my top 2. That was very well done. Absolutely brilliant. Nicely ambiguous, right? We don't know if Vader realizes that she is dead or if or what he thinks, my favorite moment was probably the conversation between Ahsoka and Maul in the throne room when they're about to, go to town on each other. And when he gives like a lot of those quotes, I mean, it was, and he's realizing, he's like, oh, this is what Sidious did. And it's perfect, and it gives so much justification to what George Lucas was doing with the prequels, which I love that as well. Like, that's a nice bonus. It's a great scene anyway, and it's a great lightsaber battle. Of course, one of the best, I think, in Star Wars history. Yeah,
actually, that they did something new with that lightsaber scene. That was actually a mocapped lightsaber scene. And I don't know if most people know this, but they actually brought in Ray Park.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they brought in Ray Park to do the motion capture for Maul. So yeah, that fight scene is phenomenal. It puts to basically every other lightsaber scene in Clone Wars to shame.
I agree, which is a tough. That's a tall order because because that has had some of the best lightsaber action we've ever had. I was amazed at just how good that was.
But you can tell the difference between something that's hand animated, because a lot of the motions that they make in the lightsaber battles in Clone Wars, they are kind of somewhat jerky and stilted at times, where they're making these movements and they kind of come to a sudden stop.
Right. Like there's these weird fast swipes.
Yeah, exactly.
Jerk. Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So that's just a consequence, like I said, of hand animating something and being under sort of like a deadline to, get the episode out the door, because that is a very labor intensive process to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could just, that lightsaber battle that they mocapped, it's so fluid.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like. It was like watching water.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you are, and it's amazing how you really are with Ahsoka and Maul specifically. You are seeing two sides of the same coin, like fighting itself almost, because, and I love that comparison where, Maul's like, oh, you're just as much the victim as me, or you're just as much the, we're the same, even though we're on different sides. I thought that was just so cool. Such a great exposition of, well, again, the entire prequel saga, not just the trilogy, but the Clone Wars as well. And probably part of the reason why both characters are so popular, and they really are. I mean, when you talk to a lot of younger fans, obviously they love Ahsoka, but they really do like Maul. Like, they got it. They understood Maul. It's to where I think a lot of older fans walked away like, oh, this guy gets offed in one movie and he's a badass and he's on all the merchandise. What the fuck? Like, we got screwed. As to where the younger fans, oh, no, he's a big deal. Like, and they get it. And so I think, those characters being concurrent was just a brilliant move on Filoni's part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried to tell a bunch of older fans, my age, that they really need to go back and watch Clone Wars to appreciate the character fully. And I still say that. I mean, for whatever reason, people still have this perception that it's just a kid's show.
Yeah, not even close. And sure as hell not the last 4 episodes of season 7.
No. That was some of the most adult content that Star Wars has ever done. Yeah,
I agree completely. Probably the largest death count minus the destruction of Alderaan, I think, in Star Wars history as well. I guess minus
Order 66.
Order 66, and I was thinking of Star Killer Base as well, as much as I try not to.
Yeah. I completely blocked that. That didn't even come to my mind.
Hosnian Prime? No, Coruscant? What do you mean? What's Hosnian? I don't know about this Hosnian Prime. Anyway, yeah. All right, anyway, go ahead.
Speaking of positives, and I know this is something normally you paid attention to, and this is something I definitely noticed, is what did you think of the music?
So, okay, I'm glad you mentioned this because the music was strange, not in a bad way.
Right.
Was that Kiner? Was Kevin Kiner?
Yes, I had to look. Okay. I couldn't believe it at first.
Because I'll tell you who I thought they hired. I thought they hired Vangelis to come in and do the score.
It was so Blade Runner.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
And it was weird at first, but I mean, it works.
Oh, it fits so well.
Yeah.
Even when Ahsoka's like when she's in hyperspace. And
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And the scene and the music, it's building in tension and you can feel it coming. Mm-hmm. And the music just, brings it full throttle.
It is really the perfect music to use because we are ultimately dealing with now. I mean, interestingly, the first, say, 8 episodes, I think, or there is the music actually follows the tone of the season, maybe even sets it, because initially you're getting, tons of John Williams music throughout the Bad Batch series. Okay. I mean, you're getting the Star Wars theme playing. I mean, it feels like A New Hope again, as far as musically goes. All right.
Right.
Then she ends up dealing on Coruscant with the 2 sisters and everything. And that's when some of the Blade Runner score starts to show up. Now, it's perfect music for Coruscant because, I mean, watch Blade Runner and think of Coruscant and it's like, well, seedy cities, of course. And for it to get darker and darker and then get into very almost metaphysical subjects, which I feel like the last 4 episodes do, and dealing with, a lot of symbolism and other things. Blade Runner is like the only match I can think of visually to what was being put on display in the latter half of season 7 Clone Wars. So using, basically taking cues almost literally from Vangelis. Well, fuck yes. Why not? And kudos to Kevin Kiner for being able to mimic the masters like John Williams, Vangelis, and so on. But I mean, yeah, give me your thoughts too, man.
I mean, like I said, I was totally blown away when I heard it, and I'd actually have to go. I didn't realize that they were adding those cues in earlier on Coruscant, but it definitely it's striking when it appears in the last 4 episodes. That the very first, like I said, that scene where they go into hyperspace and they're leaving Mandalore. Mm-hmm. It really does. It just hits you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's perfect music. It's a perfect tone.
But it's also it's so brave because it's unlike anything Star Wars has done before musically, and this really kind of expands the horizons of what Star Wars can be.
Yes, and it is. I feel like it always really works because the last time I can think of this happening is when Kevin Kiner again was scoring. Was it season 3 of Rebels when they went to Lasat or when they were dealing with the Lasat people and they went to they went through that, I don't know, wormhole or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
To find their new homeland. And in that they played very weird music, and even StarWars.com made a big deal about the music that they were playing at that time. I agree. It's bold and it's the right move to go ahead and experiment with these different kinds of tunes and tones. Because as great a legacy and almost unmatched of a legacy as John Williams will leave this world with, to grow beyond that and to have something fresh and to not have to hear for the next 100 years, the Star Wars theme over and over again.
Yeah,
please do.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. We love John Williams, but to be locked into that sound creatively, I think holds you back.
Yes.
And stunts you in a way. And so that to see that they can move beyond that and introduce a new sound, and that it works so well, I think is just wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, so I loved what Giacchino did with Rogue One. I thought, like, even the opera scene with, Vader in the, in fact, we got a little bit of that. That was another really great positive, is there was a moment where that echoed Rogue One quite a bit. Of course, the best scene in Rogue One, I think, is when Vader is going down the hallway, and slicing rebels to bits. Maul kind of does that too, where he's just walking, down this corridor, and he's just offing clone troopers, the whole time. And it's almost shot for shot in a way. We did also get the Chirrut Imwe quote of, the forces. How does it go again?
Yeah, I am the force.
I'm one with the force. The force is with me. Like Ahsoka ends up saying that.
Right.
Which fine, whatever. I mean, again, paying platitudes to Rogue One, not a bad move, because most people feel that's the best thing Disney's done, minus maybe The Mandalorian now, to date with Star Wars.
Right.
So, yeah, I love what Giacchino. Go ahead.
Like you said, I mean, like these episodes kind of run smack right into Rebels. So, I mean,
yes.
It is nice to see that, like these episodes really are kind of like the bridge to that area of Star Wars.
Yeah, directly.
Like we've defined that, like there is a set tone that's now been defined by Rogue One and Rebels for what that period between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope is like, and it's different. It's very similar to the New Hope era, but it does have a character of its own.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in fact, some more brilliant unconscious touches. I mean, they were conscious on Filoni's part, I'm sure, but unconscious touches in the first half of the season of season 7, you get the fully armored Y-wings, right? Doing their bombing runs where they have their plating on and everything. And of course we know what Y-wings look like later on when they don't have their plating.
Right.
They look like they're just slapped together or something. It's a great look. It's interesting that Rex, basically at the end of season 7, takes off in one without its plating. Like, it really is pointing out to you, okay, now we're here. This isn't the days when starships were beautiful and blah, 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 or starfighters were beautiful. Now we're into the, the utilitarian days of the rebellion. So even like little cues like that were all put there. I agree with you. I think that this concept of the bridge was so well done with this. Yeah, I mean, just to finish up on the music, I like what Giacchino did, but I got to say, I think Kevin Kiner should basically let him score everything Star Wars for a good while, because he's great at it. I mean, he's really, really great at it. And you certainly don't want, not Joe Hedelman or whatever, that whoever the Mupron was that scored Solo. That's like the only truly bad Star Wars soundtrack that I can think of that comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
There's ones I don't listen to, but that one's just bad. Go ahead.
I do hope that they continue to add new voices, like the guy that they got to do The Mandalorian. I think he did a fine job, and that definitely has a sound that is unique to that show. Not unique, period, but it is unique to that show within Star Wars. Yeah,
absolutely. But but it's also a sound that like fits in with the Star Wars universe, because it has that 70s flair, a bit of Western to it. Yeah, and it still just works. I agree. So yeah, I don't mind if they want to go places, but they need to. Someone's really got to pay attention, because you can't let what happened with Solo happen again. Actually, everything that happened with Solo, you can't let happen again. But the music, certainly so. I also kind of feel like season 7 of Clone Wars kind of heals that, because that is a movie that would have potentially been a bridge. Even though there's elements of it that I want to see more of, I think season 7 of Clone Wars really does become that chapter in between, like you said, and that might be the biggest compliment anybody could give it, is that it pulled that off. We feel like episode 3 and episode 4 now, they totally connect. So
yeah,
we have
a clear line of continuity going throughout the entire timeline of stories that we've seen on screen.
Right. Yeah. So how about some, you want to lay out some negatives? I mean, we're giving it all this glowing stuff, but I mean, how about things maybe you didn't like?
Are we just talking about Clone Wars season 7 or just the last 4 episodes?
Let's say season 7 overall. If you want to do first half, then we could talk about the last 4 episodes.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did talk about the previous episodes before.
Yeah, okay. So let's do
I
last
really,
4.
I really don't even have a whole lot negative to say. That's the thing, is I don't have much negative to say about the last 4 episodes. I liked the pacing. I didn't feel like it went by too fast. They took the proper amount of time to tell the story, and they executed it almost perfectly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any negatives with the last 4 episodes, and I really can't think of any either. I mean, the only negative I have isn't really to do with that. It's that it doesn't match the tone of the Ahsoka novel. Like, I would feel so disconnected between those two. That's not those episodes' fault, though.
No.
So I can't really.
And here again, I wouldn't say it's the novel's fault either, because like I said, I think it was based on an earlier draft of that story.
Yes, it was based on a different plan. I mean, in some form or fashion, I agree with that. Yeah, I do kind of wish that I don't know why they didn't bother to just finish the animatics for the Utapau storyline.
Yeah, you know, there was another storyline that was going to be with the Wookiees as well. There was going to be a story on Kashyyyk. And I don't know that I saw animatics at Star Wars Celebration, but I don't know that they ever released them. So those are hidden away somewhere.
Huh. Okay. Well, I would love to see those at some point. Maybe they'll do something with that. I mean, because the Utapau story, like, it was, I mean, they put it out there and you could watch it and go ahead. What do you got?
Well, it's going to come up in the next topic, but
okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that they are going to eventually.
Because I just realized who I saw in the animatics, and that makes sense now.
Okay. Well, I mean, certainly, I think we can wrap up the Clone Wars conversation, because and I would say this is a great end cap to Clone Wars. I mean, season 6 was an okay end cap too, but this definitely, puts the cherry on top. I mean, this brings closure and really turns Rebels even more so into a sequel series to Clone Wars. How about you? What are your final thoughts on season 7?
I mean, I feel the same way, and like I said, despite the flaws, like I said, of those 2 first storylines, it's the payoff was worth it.
Yes. Yeah. To get to those last 4 episodes again, as soon as Bo-Katan showed up, it's like, all right, we're on, and I agree with you there. So yeah, I think, well, anyway, Clone Wars, I would say, I think its reputation is still pretty unblemished. This didn't hurt it, in my opinion, in any way.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So bravo, way to go, Filoni, for coming back really with a win. I mean, because most of the time a show like this will come back years later. I know we already had it planned out, so it's kind of easier, but a lot of times a show will come back years later and it just doesn't live up to the classics, as to where I think this totally did, certainly with the last 4 episodes. Yeah. So anyway, any other thoughts on Clone Wars season 7?
No.
Well, then let's talk about what is coming in 2021. And we basically, season 7, admittedly, was also somewhat of a preview for this. And that is, we are getting a Bad Batch, which was the original, mini storyline at the first half of Clone Wars season 7. But now that the Bad Batch is going to turn into its own show, its own animated show. I mean, let's just get into it, Rob. What do you think? I mean, do you think this is a winner? Do you think this is like, what the hell are they doing? I mean, give me what you got.
This is a wait and see for me.
Okay.
Just because here again, being at Celebration, and Filoni talked about this, is that the Bad Batch wasn't actually Filoni's brainchild. That was another writer on the show,
right,
that came up with the idea for it. So this isn't going to be a Filoni, gig, if you will.
Yeah.
And those Bad Batch episodes weren't, particularly strong in my opinion either. And what I was saying before is like these animatics that I saw at Celebration that haven't been released, the Bad Batch goes to Kashyyyk, and I
Yeah.
assume that's where Order 66 goes down for them.
Yeah. That makes sense. And yeah, as soon as you said, it's like, oh, I know what they're doing with it. Yeah. I mean, there you go. It's an easy, and it's a Filoni storyline. So they're going to love it.
I think they already had like, more, I think they had several scripts already to go for, Bad Batch episodes within Clone Wars. And they're just they're going to take those and they're expand on them in this new series.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't mind if they went a little, because I'm worried the show's going to be a little too much comedy based on what we've got of the Bad Batch so far.
I get the impression it's basically going to be, A-Team in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I mean that's literally what they are. They're the A-Team, and as somebody myself who is, and I mean people you can't imagine, as somebody who is a massive A-Team fan, and I mean I really really am. I don't have a problem with that concept in general. I just you gotta believe that when you're doing something like the A-Team where it's kind of comedic and like it's sort of almost humorous. It's not Gallagher violence, but it's almost humorous violence. You've got to be able to believe that the characters are actual badasses, right? Because if you don't, it doesn't work. I mean, they went so far as I don't know I forget what the big guy's name is in the Bad Batch, the really huge dude, the powerful guy.
I know who you're talking about, but I forget too.
Yeah. He was even afraid of heights. And that's the same thing as Mr. T's character, B.A. Baracus. He was afraid of flying. I mean, so they're completely lifting it right off.
Right.
Other than they're adding in a fifth character, which I mean the A-Team kind of did too. I mean that's a very delicate balance to pull off. Also, I will say is that it is a formula that does not work for long. So I mean the A-Team went 5 seasons and it overstayed its welcome. And I say that as a huge fan. So don't expect the show to go along. I'll say that much with the Bad Batch.
Yeah, and don't expect any of the depth that you got in the Clone Wars.
Right.
Because here again, like I said, this as far as I mean, we haven't had any announcements about who's behind this or anything, but just from being at that the show at Celebration, Bad Batch was the impression that I got from Dave Filoni, and he was talking about it was not a story that he was really passionate about doing. It was something that one of the other writers on the show was constantly nagging him about. And he like, there is somebody behind this that is really passionate about the Bad Batch. It's just not Filoni.
Yeah. It's a shame too, because if you remember in the main Star Wars comic, there was the group of like, they weren't renegades as in they didn't work for the Empire. They absolutely did. They were taking direct orders from Darth Vader. But Darth Vader had his own little 4-man squadron of like badass stormtroopers.
And one of them had a lightsaber and
which I thought actually worked. Like, and because they were really clever and you believed that they were that badass and the dialogue worked for them. But again, it wasn't funny. Like they didn't make it humorous. And so I think it worked in that sense. I wouldn't mind if they wanted to kind of like play up to them being like the precursors of that sort of thing. But I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I don't see where this is going to end up being deep or dark or anything like that. I just can't picture it going that direction. So again, I'll state, I give it 3 seasons at best. As far, because again, otherwise the formula gets tired in my opinion.
Well, I'm wondering how much story there is to tell, because are they going to end with Order 66 like Clone Wars did, or are they going to go beyond that?
That could be interesting. I wonder
because if it picks up where we left off with them in season 7, there's not much time left.
I mean, it's an easy sell to say, well, they're mutants, so Order 66 didn't affect them.
Yeah, right.
And I could picture
they were a batch of defectives. I mean, literally, that's that's
their storyline.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so like particularly say on Kashyyyk, if they were doing that storyline, and I think that's brilliant that you brought that up. When they do that, I could see them helping the Wookiees, and like hiding away with the Wookiees.
Right.
I could even imagine Yoda making an appearance on the show, which would, of course, give it some gravitas. So, I mean, there's possibilities here. If it's going to follow them after the fact, that could be interesting.
And the literal A-Team formula could work for them in that, they're not easily recognizable as clones. And they could just be going around, hey, we're outcasts from what was, what is now the Empire. Used to be, we fought for the Republic, and we're not a part of that. So they become, this paramilitary, ex-military group that just goes around and helps people.
Yeah. They could take it that far. Again, it's a formula that you can't go for long with. But the more we're talking about it, no, I see this working. I see this like being something, and maybe having at least some, I don't know, some value, where it's not just like schlocky the whole time. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. Filoni's not exactly at the helm. He's executive producer, but what isn't he the executive producer of? But what the hell? I'm not opposed to this existing. I think it's fine.
No.
Yeah. So, all right. Move on to another subject then?
Yeah.
All right. I just kind of want to get your take on this, Rob, because you're one of those people you're one of maybe only a couple where, if I think I'm going crazy, you can tell me. or if I'm buying into something and you can say, yeah, and you have, no, Brian, no, that's bullshit. That's not happening. And they're like, okay, all right, I got you. And you've let's just say you've course corrected me here and there, not anything like mad dramatic, but and so I always respect that, obviously. And so there's a theory going around. Also, there's the fact that like your opinion is one of, 2 or 3 opinions that I actually give a shit about in the world. But anyway, but there's a theory going around that, and this is being purported by the likes of a character named Doomcock, as well as a YouTube sensational show and somewhat of a sensation known as Midnight's Edge, which I've appreciated some of that content. And there's a lot of others who are jumping on this idea that basically, and this sort of falls in line with that civil war we were talking about earlier within Lucasfilm, that it is being set up for the George Lucas camp for Disney basically to erase the sequel trilogy as canon, to get rid of it by using what we discovered in Rebels, which was the world between worlds.
Right.
And the claims go so far as to suggest that you see elements of the world between worlds in Rise of Skywalker. That's how far these people are going. And particularly they point out scenes like when we see the evil Empress Rey. Sorry, they're just so unmemorable. I even have a Funko of her up there, and I still can't remember. Anyway, so. Do you think they're going to pull this off? Do you think they're going to do this where they'll rewrite history with the world between worlds? Do you think this is going on?
No, not at all. Well, I've disagreed with Midnight's Edge. I wouldn't say I have a problem with them. Doomcock's a fucking idiot. That guy, don't watch his channel. You're going to lose brain cells watching that shit. Because that guy's a fucking idiot, and I
hate his presentation. Like I mean, it just doesn't work. It's not funny. It's not cute. Like I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
But beyond that, what I'll say is this is just more wishful thinking. It's kind of like, I've lost track of the number of times that Kathleen Kennedy has been fired.
Yeah. It's like saying Bitcoin is dead, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
No,
right. No. So yeah, I think it's wishful thinking, and not only that, even if it was happen, it would give me further reason to move beyond what Star Wars in that era has become, because they would be doing exactly what you and I talked about would be the worst case scenario. The worst use for that plot element of the world between worlds is to do exactly this kind of shit. And it's the same kind of, bullcrap that Marvel and DC have been pulling in their comic books for years and years now, and basically has caused both you and I to pretty much abandon the comics industry.
Yes. Yeah, because they're constantly rebooting the universe.
Right.
And there's like a new canon all the time. And again, this would be Disney doing it once more. And they got away with it once. I don't know if they can get away with it twice. I mean, is bad. Well, let me ask you this. Would you be opposed? Or, I mean, it sounds like you're opposed and it's the worst idea, but I mean, would you be a happier person if the sequel trilogy wasn't canon?
No, not really. Because in my mind, the best case scenario would have been for it to not be made at all.
Yeah.
And that's never going to happen. So there really is no sort of like second prize here, as far as I'm concerned. It is what it is. It exists. We just have to deal with it and move on.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts on it, I guess I'm not exactly opposed. And we talked about when the World Between Worlds was introduced. Was that season 3 or season 4 of Rebels? It was one of those.
It was the last season.
Yeah, season 4. Okay. I think we talked for like an hour about it.
Yeah.
on TFR, because we're just like, okay, this is the most radical idea ever in Star Wars. Boy, they better not ever touch it again. It worked for what
right.
and
exactly.
Drama.
That's why I'm surprised that you're saying that you wouldn't be opposed to it, because they're doing it in exactly the reason that you were kind of upset about it at the time.
Well, go ahead.
And I was the one to actually like talk you down and say, no, this isn't that bad. They won't do this.
Yeah.
And now they're if they are doing it, then they're doing the very thing that you were against to begin with.
All right. Well, so let's put some nuance to this. Like, the idea of the sequel trilogy not becoming canon, I am fine with. Using the World Between Worlds for it, maybe not so much, but just to play along with what you're saying, admittedly, I had no idea that they would fuck up this much with those movies at that time. I had no idea, that it would be that bad. But that said,
and the other thing is like, this is, I mean, there's no going home again.
Yep, that's true.
Mark Hamill has said that he will never be in a Star Wars movie ever again. So even if you get rid of the sequel trilogy timeline, you basically, Luke's story ends with Return of the Jedi, and that's it.
Well, unless they make, which we talked about, I think last episode, the idea that the next movie would actually be a Luke Skywalker movie between Return of the Jedi and.
Yeah, but I don't think they'll do that. I mean,
they're making blanket statements that they think that's the most interesting time of Star Wars to explore is after Return of the Jedi, like that. Like Favreau has said that at this point. Obviously, a lot of the shows that they're making are doing exactly that, so it makes sense that they would say such a thing.
But I mean, you like I said, there's a hard limit on to what they can do without, recasting or CGI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Well, so let me bring this up. This is a point I was going to get to as well, is that a part of me, I have been troubled, dare I say, by the visual dictionary of Rise of Skywalker, because there is a quick and I've talked about this many months ago in previous episodes. As soon as I got my hands on it, it was one of the first things where I was like, what the fuck is that about? Where the chasm that what's his name? Kylo Ren.
Ren.
Yeah. I can't remember any of them. Like, I just don't care about these characters. But anyway, but Kylo Ren, there's the chasm he falls into on Exegol, right? And the visual guide very clearly states that chasm, the Sith Eternal, think that it's like a vergence.
Yeah, it was a vergence in the Force. Yeah.
Right. That like there is something special about that chasm.
It's part of what they call the vergence scatter.
Yeah. So, like, a part of me wonders, I wondered as soon as I read that, like, are they going to try and like reboot some shit using that fucking chasm somehow, or this vergence? So I don't know if it's World Between Worlds, but I kind of feel like that might have been put there. What do you got?
Yeah, I have my own ideas about that. I mean, but this is stuff that I'm working on.
Okay.
For myself.
All right. Well, we're going to hold on those then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't need to
right.
give Disney our great ideas. We
right,
gave them
exactly.
We already gave them one great idea with Mara Jade.
I'll say that what I will say is there are interesting things that you can do with that idea that are not terrible.
Aha. Okay. All right. Well, then there we go. So, but rebooting or erasing the sequel trilogy would be one of the terrible things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I think it's better to accept, the negative aspects of Star Wars's personality and grow and move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Star Wars needs to self-actualize.
Yes. I think I agree. It needs to learn to accept, you can't love people in slices, right? You've got to accept the whole thing. Yeah. Right. So anyway, I think what I'm waiting for. So we have a Poe Dameron book coming out. I think in August. That was a shock. Like it was a surprise drop. I am going to read that, and depending, I feel like if they are actually planning on this, on rebooting the sequel trilogy, there will be hints in that book. If they are not there, I am going to see the publication of this book as a vote of confidence in the characters of the sequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy as a whole on Disney's part. So that's really going to be my judgment call. Is a lot of it is going to be based on that book. So
I would expect the latter, just me personally.
Okay, like that it's a vote of confidence in the sequel trilogy. Yeah. I could see that. Well, we'll see. So anyway, so I wanted your take on that. I kind of expected how you'd feel about the whole notion. I feel like my universe would be a little bit better if Filoni was just, coming up with all the stories and we had a vision man, planning the future of Star Wars. Right. But at the same time,
and maybe that will happen. I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But, the thing I should bring up, and I think I did bring this up before, is that there were a lot of people that didn't like the prequels.
Yep.
I'll be the first to admit, I still do not care for Attack of the Clones that much. It's probably my least favorite film in the entire, the prequel trilogy. But what Filoni did with the Clone Wars, I think for me and a lot of people really kind of, I don't want to go as far as to say redeemed, because it didn't necessarily need redeeming, but it did, kind of do exactly that. It brought it into being what it needed to be great Star Wars.
Right.
I think there's a sliver of a possibility that he could possibly do that for the sequel trilogy. Maybe not completely. That those movies have some serious warts. I understand. I'm not trying to overlook or downplay anything. I'm just saying that you could do other things in that timeline that sort of maybe heal things to a degree or make them acceptable or passable. And that allows people to move on to whatever's next that comes after the sequel trilogy.
Right. I mean, the hard part there, and I could see that, and if anybody could do it, it'd be Filoni. In fact, he's the only one, in my opinion, or maybe Claudia Gray. I don't know. But the only problem is that the nice thing about the prequel trilogy is that it happens over a fairly long period of time, as to where the sequel trilogy is like a matter of days.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think it's a miracle if that was a month of time that spanned there. And there's no real time to extrapolate and to expand on those characters themselves, like Clone Wars did, where it made the characters that maybe people thought were lackluster in the films, but then turned them into, shining stars in the Clone Wars. Right. And then that, just bled onto the movies and made the movies even better.
Right.
You can't do that exactly with the sequel trilogy, or at least I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I recognize that, and my responsibility, or my response, sorry, I would say, is that you don't necessarily have to even use those characters. You could just create characters that exist in that universe at that time period that had some sort of impact and were doing something that was, just as important or more important than what was going on in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, okay, I can agree with that, because the Poe Dameron comic did actually did a fairly good job of that. You got great moments with Leia. You got great moments with Poe. You got, even great moments with Snap and, whoever. So yeah, I could see that being possible. I mean, we even got Loris Anteca, more of him in the Poe Dameron comic that worked,
right. Right.
So, and was interesting. So, okay. Yeah, I could see that happening. All right. Fair enough. But boy, that's a long haul. But
it's a tall order. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anybody can do it, it is Filoni. If they give him the time, I'm sure he can make it happen. I do feel confident that he could make that happen. But it definitely would take time and really great stories. And
I don't think that kind of thing would come about anytime soon either.
Right.
I'm seeing 5-10 years down the line.
Yeah, I mean, because the first thing you'd have to do, you have to make Hosnian Prime fucking mean something. You've got to make that star system mean something. So when it gets destroyed, holy shit, I mean, you freak out. Go ahead.
Maybe that's what they're going to do is, they're going to focus on that time period between, Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to make the First Order more legit. There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm starting, as you talk about it, I'm starting to see where this could happen. So, okay. No, fair enough. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I'm personally feeling like I don't know that they're planning on rebooting the sequel trilogy. I do think the Civil War element is still accurate. Like I was talking about earlier, that I think there's a Kennedy camp and a Lucas camp, more or less. Mm-hmm. But I'm not totally buying into yet this idea that they're going to reboot that they're going to make the sequel trilogy non-canon. Well, you want to shift on to something else?
Sure.
Okay. So this will be our last subject for the episode. We'll save some of the other stuff for another one. But we got to get this in. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it. But something that as far as I know, this is canon. But holy fuck, I wish it wasn't. CBS, shifting franchises here. We're going to Star Trek. CBS released a 2-minute trailer for Star Trek Lower Decks, which is an animated series for Star Trek. Obviously not the first one. The first one was Star Trek, the animated series from the 70s, which was fantastic. And this, well, call it, Rob. I mean, when it's coming out in August.
Pile of crap.
Yeah. It's Rick and Morty in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And that's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life. Like, I love Rick and Morty. I'm a huge fan. I think I keep saying that about a lot of things in the show, but I'm a fan of Rick and Morty. I even have, I have, figures and whatever else. I think it's just a terrible idea. What do you got on this one?
Well, it's always a terrible idea to copy, somebody else's work.
Yes. When Star Trek has been the trailblazer, there's no need to copy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And they're even going so far as to grab one of the writers from Rick and Morty, and they're even using that in the advertising, as like they're intentionally trying to attach themselves to that, fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know how much of a crossover there really is.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Rick and Morty fans are Star Trek fans, like the older fans. But I don't think
the people who are fans of New Trek.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, because Rick and Morty's pretty highbrow for that type. You know what I mean?
or pretty lowbrow. I mean, it goes both ways.
That's true. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, I would say at the same time, as much as I enjoy Rick and Morty, I don't want it to be any element of my Star Trek. I'm not interested in that. Like that doesn't even make sense to me. I have diverse tastes because I'm a human being and I have diverse feelings. I don't want everything in one, my biggest, I'll say this, I think the comedy, like I didn't laugh once while watching the trailer. and it's meant to be comedic. This is a show about like the people who, aren't on the bridge. And I'm okay with doing a show like that. And there have been series that have concentrated on that where
they did some episodes of Voyager where they did literally Lower Decks crew, they concentrated on those characters.
Yeah. And it worked. Even like within the first season, they did that. And it really, really worked. Babylon 5 has done that. There's lots of shows that have done that. Or, a show that was all about that was Red Dwarf. And that show's a goddamn riot. I love Red Dwarf. Hilarious. But this doesn't look like that. And also you have to compete with the fact that, Star Trek has a history and an expectation. And I think that's something worth, paying attention to and sticking with. If you just want to make parody, then make parody. Don't make it Star Trek, right? I'll say this. I want to ask you what your biggest problem was with it, but I'll tell you mine. My biggest problem with it was towards the end of the trailer, and you have the guy who's nude. And he's like playing up like a sexy, like, I don't know, he's pretending to be the captain, and like a gal walks in and he stands up and he's nude and he's like, it's almost like a Simpsons moment or something, know? And what my problem with it is that, so Star Trek's finally willing to really go there with nudity, and they turn it into a joke. And what a missed opportunity for Star Trek to make commentary on, well, let's just say nudism or naturism, or whatever. Pick however, you express nudity and so on, or even in elements of sexuality. What a missed opportunity for Star Trek to go there, to be that adult, as apparently this show wants to be, and to turn it into a joke. I think it's a complete fail. They dropped the ball on this. Star Trek had an opportunity for commentary. If you're willing to do this, no. And in fact, it even shows how immature CBS really is, because they didn't even have the balls to do it in live action. They had to do it in a cartoon. It's like, I have so many choice words I want to use. Go ahead.
You kind of hit the nail on the head. You used a very important word in that commentary. And Star Trek has always been commentary on modern society in one way or another. Mm-hmm. I don't expect a drop of that in this show. Period.
Right. And that's what that's what they keep telling us. Is like, oh, you didn't think Picard was good? Well, no, you don't understand. It's commentary on this, and season 2 is going to be commentary on this, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get you. That's what Star Trek is about, commentary. You might not execute it well, but that's what it's about. But then you're feeding us this horse shit, and it's like, stop, Yeah. And it's not like, Star Trek can do animated, and it can do it very well. The 70s series was one such case. I think they were going to do a web series where it took place like in the year 3000 or something.
Right. I remember that.
It was all about the Federation falling apart. It was going to be a very dark show. Mm-hmm. I am game on for that. Like, let's do it, and do it animated to save on the budget, please. Of course, I totally understand that. That's fine.
The designs that got leaked for that show looked really cool too.
Oh, they're awesome. Uniforms alone, badass.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. So this is missed opportunities, missed representation. It's just totally off the mark.
Well, here again, it's Star Trek riding the wave of popular culture rather than trailblazing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, you're totally right. And again, it's more of this clear sign that a lot of these franchise heads, be it Disney, CBS, whoever, their plan is clearly not to make, not to continue the franchises in what made them great, but how do we get more demographics? How do we bring in, more demographics and more people in all this? And frankly, that sucks, because that takes away the specialness of why people actually give a shit about these things in the first place. So yeah, this is a fail.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm even going to watch it. Go ahead.
It just shows how much, the industry had changed, because it used to be that, the marketing people were the people you had to, and the studio people were the people you had to impress with the pilot.
Right.
Once you got the pilot out the door and they signed off on it, it was up to the writers to bring, people into the show and more demographics and do whatever. Mm-hmm. But now you've got too many fingers in the pie. Yeah.
It's focus group to death.
Yeah, it's focus group to death. The marketing is involved in every aspect. The studio heads come and, they're having. It used to be that, if the studio heads wanted to see the dailies, they'd have to go down to either the production studio or the sets to see them themselves. Now they can just email those to their computer, or they're watching it on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're going, oh well, I don't like this, and let's do this, and can we try that? And they're able to fiddle in ways that they never did before.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, and there was a slow progression of that, because eventually got to the point where, okay, you can give me the dailies on VHS and I can look at those, and then you could take it to the office, but even then it was a pain in the ass.
Right.
But as it got easier, then yes, more fingers got into the pies. You're totally right about that. I'm also worried that they are paying too much attention to the fans. And Straczynski's recently actually tweeted about this, the creator of Babylon 5, of course. And he said, no, he says, you can't, he says, I don't even want to be on the internet. He says, and he actually explicitly says, don't give me story ideas. Don't talk to me about story ideas, because he feels the instant that you do that, the creator, the writer, is basically sullied, right?
Yeah,
like
tainted.
he's tainted. Yes, exactly. And I think he's absolutely right about that. And I've always praised George Lucas for, no, he's the creator. You let him do it. You don't like it. Okay. You don't like it, but don't fucking tell him what to do.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure as fuck glad that Twitter wasn't around when episode 1 came out. Anyway, yeah, this is a fail. I mean, what do you, I assume you're not looking forward to this at all.
No, it just looks stupid and silly and senseless, right down to the design of the ship, which is just the most absurd, ridiculous, stupid ship design I've ever seen. It is fucking awful.
It is.
Okay, so I mean, you look at this thing, and you've got, so in order to get to the engineering deck from the saucer section, you've got to travel down through the nacelle pylons and through the nacelles themselves to get to engineering.
Yep.
Unless engineering's in the saucer section, in which case at least deflector control is down in that section. So like, who's volunteering to travel through the warp nacelles while they're in warp to go work on the deflector dish? Yeah,
I'll tell you, I agree with everything you're saying. I think they literally wanted to make a starship that looked like a guy bending over.
Yeah.
I think they had that, and I mean, and I say that in only half in jest. I think, like, I'm also half serious. I think that's exactly what they were going for. Is that they are not, it doesn't have to be a guy, but just somebody bending over.
Yeah.
It's clearly meant to be comedic, but I think that was their impetus.
Well, I guess, if it's, if because the tone I'm definitely getting is that this is the Starship Asinine.
Yeah. That would have been a great name. Star Trek Asinine. Oh man. I mean, on a bright side, actually, IDW started coming out with, they just restarted a Deep Space Nine comic book series. We haven't had one of those in, maybe 20 years or over a decade. Yeah. And I read the first issue. I loved it. I mean, so there's some good Star Trek out there, but it's not on CBS All Access. I'll tell you that much. So anyway, yeah, I'm not looking forward to this either. So Star Trek Lower Decks, I don't know. Again, I don't even know if I'm going to watch it. I don't know if I could do it.
I'm passing.
Yeah. I've had enough.
I just like with the Star Wars books, I reserve the right to force myself to watch anything that I know I'm probably not going to like.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you didn't miss anything with the new Shadow or the new Alphabet Squadron novel.
Oh, I'm shocked.
It was just another ridiculously long, fucking pointless. I mean, it just, pointless. It didn't go anywhere. I know it's supposed to be a trilogy, so I guess there's good, and it definitely sets up for another book. It was horrible. It wasn't horrible. I mean, Alexander Freed's a fine writer, but it didn't do anything. There was no weight. There's nothing that matters that happened. So there's your review, folks, for, what was it? Shadow Wing, I think was the title of it, or something like that. Just not worth your time. Though I am interested the Dr. Aphra book comes out end of month. I'm on board for that. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so why don't we get, we're here at the end of the show. Why don't we get in our picks and then we'll wrap this baby up. Right on. So I'll start off because mine, I don't think mine will really take long to talk about. I'm not going to say how I ended up finding out about this book, but I find it is something I find strange. H.G. Wells, it was a very prolific author. However, if you talk to most people, at best, they know 4 books, maybe 5 by H.G. Wells. But again, he had written like 30. I mean, fiction, nonfiction. And so, I mean, he's just written tons and tons of fiction, well beyond The Invisible Man, The Time Machine, go down the list of them, right? War of the Worlds and so on. I ended up discovering this book called Men Like Gods by H.G. Wells. It was a little bit of a later book from him. And it is what could be considered a utopian novel. It is utopian fiction. It basically has to do with characters in 1923 so it's post World War I, who end up getting transported due to an experiment in an alternate universe to an alternate Earth. But this alternate Earth's history is very, very different from our Earth's history. And basically for 3,000 years, they never had a dark age. And so for 3,000 years, they've just been, progressing, like going up, and they've gotten to the point of utopia. It is an anarchist novel explicitly. This utopia, this alternate world and H.G. Wells had a lot to say about societal issues. He definitely used his pen to, his fiction as well, to describe how he would like things to be. He was one of those guys, and this is one of the cases where this is, to him, was like his perfect world. And it's impressive because I don't think most people think of H.G. Wells as being an anarchist, but he absolutely was. And he is explicit in this book about anarchism being and because whenever, like, there's a politician that ends up going to this parallel Earth, there's a priest, there's all these other characters, and the utopians, as they're called, I mean, just wipe the floor with them philosophically. Now, it falls prey, like many books that have a societal message, it falls prey to the problem of where there's very long speeches. I mean, it kind of almost feels like an Ayn Rand novel, unfortunately.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's H.G. Wells, so he's actually a great writer, and I think it works. And it's so shocking to read these ideas, especially from 1923, or from the early 20th century. And from somebody who is so still well regarded as H.G. Wells is, to debate. Basically, I don't want to say conspiracy, but I'll just use that term. It almost feels like there's a conspiracy that his utopian works, of which this is not the only one, his utopian works have been completely ignored. Not because they're not as good as War of the Worlds or The Invisible Man or, whatever. I think it's because, publishing houses just want to steer clear of this shit. They want to steer clear of anarchism. I love it. I think Men Like Gods, I thought it was a tremendous, tremendous book. I really had a lot of fun with the fiction. I like reading utopian fiction because if I'm going to take the time to escape, I might as well escape to a place where things worked out. And, unlike Star Trek Lower Decks. I recommend this. If you love H.G. Wells, any of his work, you are in for an absolute treat. And it's so comforting to know that somebody so brilliant, went the distance to where he's like, yeah, no, you know what? Anarchism. Let's go. Anyway, so there, I've got that. Wonderful book. So I don't think there might be an audiobook, but I think the narrator's shitty. But the book's out there you can find it. Anyway, that's my pick. So Men Like Gods. Go ahead.
That's something I'll definitely look into. And I definitely subscribe to your theory about why it's not as well known. In fact, I think there's probably even an element now that, a lot of books now are sold or bought by publishers on, well, can we sell this as a movie script?
Right.
And we know anything with anarchism is not going to pass muster. Something like War of the World wills, because, you can have, you can show off scenes of the military being heroic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, how has The Dispossessed never been made into a film? That doesn't even make sense, right? It's such a well-regarded book. It's such a popular book. Ursula, Le Guin's, I mean, her other books have been turned into movies, but that one that's about anarchism, no, we're not going to put that out there. So that I think there is a concerted effort as far as that goes, to keep that from being a part of popular media. So anyway, Rob, what do you got, man?
So speaking of anarchy, I'm going to review a game, and which the default state is anarchy, because you in this game are on a planet by yourself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a game that I actually I didn't think I was initially was not that interested in it, because it's in the survival genre.
Mm-hmm.
Think Minecraft and what is it? Ark and some of these other sort of games.
Oh, like Dead Island, maybe?
That's
more of a first person. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this one's first person as well, but it's basically, you crash land on this, basically it's a water world, it's a planet completely covered in ocean.
Minus Kevin Costner.
Right. But and you start off with a lifeboat, and you have all these kind of tools to go out and collect resources and upgrade your technology and build things. The reason, I tried it out on a whim because I got it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I stuck with it, I'm like 20 hours into the game now, and the reason I stuck with it is because it actually has a really good story. And there's a lot of different moving parts going on in the story. There's I want to say almost like an Ancient Aliens sort of storyline
right on.
going on here. And then you also kind of have the sort of Gilligan's Island sort of, aspect to it. Because like I said, you're this lone survivor.
Mm-hmm.
There are other survivors, but you go out looking for them and you find what you will. But
I mean, if this is basically Waterworld the game, I'm there. I love that movie, damn it.
But most of it takes place under the water.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you're going out and you're salvaging, wreckage from your ship and from other ships that have crashed, mm-hmm. and you're collecting resources from and you're basically, the entire game takes place basically underneath a underwater caldera. It's like a extinct mega volcano, super volcano.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like the confines of your gameplay area.
So and you're in a submarine, right? Or you have a submarine.
You can build one eventually. You start off all you have is the life raft.
Okay.
And it's got a replicator and a tool that you can use to they almost have it's like a portable replicator, it's a handheld replicator, and you
mm-hmm.
you say you point it at an area and say build this, and it'll build a structure for you.
Okay.
If you have the resources to build it.
Okay. So you shared some pictures with me. This is a very nice surprise of the submarine from this game. And can I say what was on it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So on the side, so it was black. Mainly black, and then it had red highlights, we'll say, the submarine. And then it says right across the side, it says Sovryn 1. And I was just like, oh man, that's so sweet. And it looked badass. It looked so cool. I loved it. I thought that was so.
And
go ahead.
It is just it's for me, this game really just kind of it is in the survival genre, but it definitely kind of crosses over into other things. Because one, the story is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
Which is normally not what you expect from these kind of games, because it's not the point of them for the most part. And two, the visuals, are just the amount of flora and fauna that they invented for this game is amazing and terrifying.
Well, I love that. That's what I loved about the Metroid Prime games, is that you could scan everything, and everything had a definition, or everything had a description. Yeah.
And that's exactly what this game is like. You go out and you scan all these different, you can scan the plants, the animals, everything. And not only that is very, it is not a game that's based around violence.
Oh, I love it.
To achieve your ends.
I love it.
There you will get attacked by different sea creatures, but your optimal ways of dealing with it are not with violence and by killing the creatures.
That's fantastic. So when did this game come out? When did Subnautica, right? That's the name of it?
Yeah, I think it was in early access for a while, but I think the final release was like 2018.
Okay. So it's got a little age on it, but that's fine. And that's fairly recent. And there's an expansion pack, right?
There's either, I don't know if it's expansion or a standalone game, but it is kind of like it's a new character, a new story. It takes place on the same planet, but a different part of it. Or I guess like part of it's like frozen over. So there are like, ice areas. Okay.
Well, I mean, as long as, the main game isn't in early access, I have no qualms with getting my hands on it, and I love the sound of it. I'll have to build the Sovryn 2, I suppose. So to keep my namesake in good order. No, but that's so great. Yeah, I mean, do you have like a ranking for it? Like if you gave it an out of 10?
Oh yeah, this is easy 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, that's an instant buy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a perfect game, but everything that there's nothing in this game that for me that where I look at it and see that they tried to do something and they failed at it. There's nothing like in everything that they set out to do in this game that they put a lot of thought and effort into it, and it really shows.
I love it. I mean, to have that like Metroid Prime element of like scanning everything and everything having a description. The open sounds like somewhat open worldness of it, and things like
you can go anywhere within like I said, the confines of this like extinct super volcano.
Yeah,
it does let you go beyond that point, but if you try to do that, then it spawns like all these like mega leviathan creatures that come and attack you.
Well, it sounds like it just sounds like a great mix. Like of different elements. And I love a good storyline, especially in a game type that you wouldn't expect it. Right. Just like actually I was mentioning on Sovereign Tech recently, like Age of Mythology, an RTS usually doesn't have that great of a story, where like it's a laugh out loud story at points or makes you feel at points, whatever. But I feel like that delivered on that. So when a game can do that, it can have a really great story. Well, I was just saying at the top of the show how important story is to me. So I'm on top of this one. I'm there for that.
It's a great sort of like mystery that you have to solve. In fact, it's multiple mysteries that are interlinked.
Fuck, it's like Myst.
I would say it's actually better than Myst.
All right, that's impressive. Yeah, all right, I'm going to pick it up. Fantastic. So Subnautica, 9 out of 10 from Rob. I think that sounds like an instant buy. Do you know, is it on anything besides PC, or is this basically PC only? Do you have to get it on Steam?
No, it's also available on the Epic Store.
Oh, those guys.
I'm not going to endorse them, but it's available. I don't think
it's on GOG.
I don't think so. It might be. I haven't looked.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got it for free on Epic when they've been giving away games left and right, and
right.
I'm stuck at home bored like everybody else. I thought, I'll just give this a shot. And I thought I was just going to try it for an hour or two, and it sucked me in.
Nice. The best games, that's what they do. Actually, the worst games do that too, like World of Warcraft, but this is not one of those cases. It's sucking you in for the right reasons. So I love it. All right, so 9 out of 10, Subnautica, definitely pick that up. And of course, H.G. Wells' Men Like Gods, have a good time with that one as well. So I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, as much shitty stuff is coming out there, we've had some great stuff. I think overall come out recently, and certainly some interesting things to come. I'm feeling pretty good about sci-fi, I guess. Not. Yeah. I mean certainly. Go ahead.
At the very least, we have stuff like the X-Wing upgrade project, where like the fans are kind of taking a hold of the franchise and doing their own thing with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's other places where the fans are just going to take hold of the franchises and do what needs to be done. And that's what's got me really excited. That those are the things that make me feel good about where some of this is going. So no matter how bad CBS or Disney or whoever does, fans will clean it up, and I love it when they do. So We save ourselves, you understand. There's no one coming to save us. So there's our message for the show. Anyway, Rob, as always, man, great time. Yeah, we'll have a lot more to talk about next month. I did want to get into Tron 3. I'll just tease it. We're definitely going to talk about it next time, I think, because there's a lot to say, a lot of BS to get out of the way, but then, get at what's actually happening. And that might be exciting as well. Might be cautiously optimistic.
Hopefully we'll get some more news too.
Yeah. I'd like to have a little more news, even though we did get some degree of official word. But anyway, we'll talk about that next time on TIE Fighter Renegades. And we will see all of you on the other side.